This is Cape Talk. Cape Talk.
And it is time to wander the world, and we're having so much fun today because we're talking about traveling to destinations that you've seen in a movie or perhaps a television show that have made you go, I want to go there. Partly because it might look beautiful. Maybe you just loved the whole feeling of a show and wanted to feel like you were immersed in that world. The term for it, I love this. Rather than jet setting, we're talking about set jetting. Jetting between movie sets, get it? Planning a holiday specifically in order to visit one of those beautiful locations. A couple more of your comments already in on the places you've been inspired to go to by movies. Elsa saying, Assisi. I was obsessed with the movie Brother, Sun and Sister Moon back in the early 70s when I was 18. For Janice, it was Sri Lanka. Not inspired by a movie, but by watching the cricket on TV. She said it was my most memorable holiday, an absolute surfer's paradise. I'd love to hear from more of you about the trips you've undertaken, particularly because of a film. We've already had Mamma Mia taking people to Greece, Under the Tuscan Sun, Eat, Pray, Love sending people to India, Salzburg and the Sound of Music. I bet our guest is going to add a couple of current favorites to the list. It's a huge pleasure to welcome back to studio Iga Motylska, who is a national tourist guide, travel advisor, guidebook author, and the editor of eagerjourneys.com. It's great to have you with us again. Welcome back.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pippa. An absolute pleasure to be here. So excited about today's topic as well.
Such a fun topic. Set jetting. I mean, I love that phrase. It's clever. How do you understand that phrase, though? What does it mean to you?
I think it's exactly how you encapsulated it in your intro. It's that fans want to feel close to the stories, to the places, to the characters that they've grown to love. And so they want to stand where Daenerys stood at King's Landing. They want to sit at that iconic cafe in Montmartre in Paris, surrounded by that whimsical atmosphere of Amélie. Yeah. They want to spot the facade of the Friends building, which is one of my favorites in Greenwich Village in New York. They want to stroll through Hobbiton, so they want to be surrounded and immersed by all of those different destinations. And so essentially it creates that sort of emotional connection between the viewer and the characters and the story, that whole narrative. And of course, we've seen in recent years how Instagram and TikTok and social media in general has fueled this trend. And so very often posting a photo at a very recognizable film location is sort of like a badge of honor for fans.
Okay.
And of course, streaming services, have helped with that as well. As you mentioned, they're exposing us to all of these destinations we might not have thought about traveling to in the past. And so, of course, it's sparking these new sort of travel desires amongst us.
Yeah. So a couple of red flags here. One is the fact that not all of these locations are actually where they appear to be on film. And I'm saying this thinking the other night I was alone at home, randomly flicking through channels, and up came Cocktail. And I thought, absolutely, I'm going to watch that again. And I enjoyed it every bit as much as I did as a teenager. But I looked at the famous scene of Tom Cruise and Elizabeth Shue cavorting in the waterfall. And I thought, I bet that waterfall is not even in Jamaica. It's probably filmed in somewhere lower, like upper reaches of New York State or something like that. So problem one, not everywhere is filmed where it's actually located. Problem two is a more serious one, Iga, and that's that some of the places are dark tourism spots, if we can call it that. They are places that are associated with a lot of historical pain and are not necessarily, it's not sensitive to go and, hey, I'm here for the Instagram selfie. Do you want to share a couple of examples of that version with us?
Yes, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. For shows like Narcos, for example, or Chernobyl, these locations are tied to real life tragedies and very sensitive historical events. Other examples that we may have seen or read about is the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam. Yeah. There's obviously the killing fields of Cambodia that I visited as well when I was there a few years ago. And in South Africa, we've obviously got Robben Island. And so these destinations are linked to a very poignant, difficult past in history for people and generations that have come since then. And so I think it's very important to visit these sites to learn from the history, not just to go to see the destinations, but to honor the victims, to reflect on the events and to do so mindfully I think rather than just, using it as a backdrop for a casual photo you're going to post on social media.
Yeah. I think the worst example I saw of that, and I remember the Auschwitz Museum actually having to step in to say, please, would people stop taking selfies on the train tracks leading into Auschwitz?
Absolutely.
And I kind of thought at the time, have we really got there that people think that's okay?
Yes.
You're missing the point of going there in the first place.
Absolutely. And that's something that's really close to my heart because I was born in Poland. So I have been to Auschwitz a number of times. And I'm very grateful that these establishments and museums, for example, are making those notes to people. But it's sad to see that people sometimes get caught up in that. So I think it's very important to be mindful about that. And something else that I would say is to obviously just, avoid any kind of disrespectful behavior, anything that might be seen as, disrespectful. So climbing
inappropriate,
climbing monuments or being very loud and boisterous. And I think something else that I would highly recommend is to do tours that focus on education and that are guided by victims or past victims or families of victims, because in a way you allow them to tell their story. You are allowed to hear their side, their perspective beyond maybe what you might have seen on the big screen. And again, I think it allows them to sort of live within that narrative and to retell that story from their own perspective. So I think something important to be mindful of.
Thanks for that. We went quite dark quite quickly. Sorry, let's maybe circle back to the lighter side of this conversation. But I think it was important to just get that out the way and be mindful of the sites you're going to, that they're not just a movie set in many cases.
Absolutely.
Some of them are just a movie set. And I mean, this is one of the things we need to talk about. Some of them are CGI, if not completely CGI created, then certainly have been touched up and brushed up with the help of computers. Is that something to consider as well, that you're planning your amazing trip to whatever site it may be and you get there but it doesn't look anything like it was in the movie.
Right. And you might say, hang on a minute, expectation versus reality, very, very different. And so as you mentioned, many of these breathtaking scenes, have been enhanced by CGI or special effects. Perhaps they've been decorated with custom built props, or they've been filmed on custom built sets. And we only see a small little section of that. Many of these sets no longer exist or have been dismantled entirely. So what appears to be a vast ancient city, for example, might only be a small little section that's been digitally altered post-production, and to give us that sense of awe and scale. So I think it's important to temper your heart, especially if you have high expectations, and also to remember that many of these scenes might have been filmed on private property where you might not have access, or you might need a specific permit. And also to keep in mind that perhaps maybe they might have been filmed during a specific season. Maybe when the spring blossoms, are in full bloom, and now you're coming and visiting in winter when the trees are bare. And so it can have a completely different kind of ambience and look and feel. So I think that's important. And something else to keep in mind is that after the crew has packed up, everyday life continues. And so you might have windswept garbage, you might have graffiti, you might have, for example, a new pop-up shop or a cafe that's come up there. And very often these destinations are very aware of the industry and the economics behind it, that it draws large crowds and they want to try sustain that verisimilitude. But sometimes it's just another neighborhood where you and me live. And so I think it's important to be mindful of that, like when you go there as well, is just to remember that.
I'm thinking of the Blue Door in the Hugh Grant.
Notting Hill. Yes.
Thank you. That gorgeous movie. And I remember reading how many people were, crawling to that scene to try and get their selfie outside the Blue Door, and how intrusive it was for the neighbours, for whom it was just another block in their neighbourhood that they walk past every day. So point taken. I just want to say, in case anybody's come in midway to this conversation, that our guest in studio is Iga Motylska, national tourist guide and travel guide writer, as well as the editor of eagerjourneys.com, talking about this idea of set jetting, planning your trip to go and experience a movie or television location of a show or film that you've really loved. And we've had some lovely ideas coming in from listeners who've already made this kind of sort of pilgrimage almost to a film set. I'm going to put in my 2 cents worth. Earlier this year, I went to Edinburgh. I didn't go to Edinburgh specifically because of Harry Potter, but I knew that the city had huge associations, and that series is very, very dear to my heart. So what I did was I set aside a day and I said, right, I'm giving myself permission to waste an entire day scouring through the sites associated with Harry Potter. So it was going to the little desk at the window where J.K. Rowling wrote the book, which has been moved because the original location burnt down, but it's the original desk. It was visiting the graveyard where the tombstones gave the inspiration for many of the names, and it was finding the Potter grave and the Scrimgeour grave, etc. I spent an entire afternoon there, and these locations are scattered all around. And I found when I was researching, I wanted to do it myself, but there were lots and lots of organised tours, Iga, that I could have joined had I wanted to. And in fact, on the afternoon, I was in the Greyfriars Kirkyard looking around. There must have been at least 4 tour groups going past, and only one of them I heard mentioning the actual history of what is a significant churchyard under which thousands of people are buried. The rest of them were all there for the Harry Potter fans. I found it very, very interesting. So that's an example of a fairly recent one. I'm sure you've got much more current ones to share with us. Do you want to give us some ideas of where people are going right now?
Sure, absolutely. I just want to say that I did exactly the same thing. I went to Oxford to the Bodleian Library. One of my best friends recently sent me a photograph from King's Cross station with platform 9 3/4. You've got these beautiful landscapes and views of like Millennium Bridge as well, and Glenfiddich Viaduct where the train goes across.
Well.
Yes. So same. I did that too. Something that's close to my heart as well is The Witcher in Poland. Is Ogrzeniec Castle. And of course, it's a medieval castle in southern Poland, so really close to where I was born. And it makes part of the scenic Eagle's Nest Trail. And it's wonderful because you've got 60 odd castles that are located along this track, and various forts and so on as well. So you can really go and see the crumbling walls. You can visit the towers, the courtyards, and obviously it's this beautiful, haunting backdrop that you can see. And so the entire route is actually 163 kilometers. It's dotted with 14th century fortifications. It stretches all the way to Krakow. And there are 25 different castles along this way. And exactly what you said, Pippa, is to avoid over-tourism is not to solely just go for the destination and for the film sets, but to go and visit places nearby and in and around the surrounds. I think that's also something that's quite nice, because then you're also tempering your expectations in terms of not solely going to go see that, but having a much bigger, wider sort of experience as well.
Okay. Somebody's asking, did I go to Diagon Alley? Yes, I did. Victoria Street is the actual street name, but it's cobbled and it's full of those little colourful stores that were the inspiration for Diagon Alley in Harry Potter. So yes, absolutely. And I have that selfie. I will concede to it. Okay, so if you're a fan of The Witcher, lovely suggestions there about heading to Poland. You mentioned Narcos earlier, and as you said, this is one you've got to approach with some degree of care, because we're talking here about drug trafficking and an industry that has brought misery to millions. But at the same time, I'm seeing on a lot of my traveler groups huge interest in visiting Colombia and Bogota and Medellin, etc.
Yes, exactly. And so in Medellin, you see people going and visiting Pablo Escobar's grave. It's located in Monte Sacro Cemetery. They also visit the neighborhood that is named after him. And again, that's a little bit controversial, because some residents, show loyalty to him because he was very philanthropic. He did try to uplift people and he did do good for the communities in some way. Obviously he had his own sort of ideals around that and so on, but it's just a tangible reminder of the influence and the complex sort of socio-economic dynamics of the time. And of course there are giant, larger-than-life murals there as well, depicting him and in honor of him. There's also La Catedra, which he built himself as his luxurious prison. So it's located in the mountains near Medellin, and only parts of the original structure remain. But it's been repurposed into a monastery and a homeless shelter, which is very fascinating.
That is kind of a spiritual scrubbing of the site. If I've ever heard of it, that's amazing.
Totally. And then you can go and explore Park Bolivar by yourself. And of course, course, that's the Central Park in Medellin. You've got lots of various public, beautiful spaces that you can visit there as well. In Bogota, you've got La Candelaria, sorry about my pronunciation. And of course, it's a very colorful and atmospheric area that's, very often seen in these establishing shots. I would also recommend the National Museum, Museo Nacional. And of course, there are, as you mentioned, many different tours. And I think going on a tour where the locals can give you those insights beyond what you can just read on the internet, I think can give it so much more color and sort of bring it to life.
Yeah. Lovely one from Pierre, New Zealand. And I know New Zealand tourism had such a boom off the back of Lord of the Rings. Pierre says, amongst the others we've been, what remains close to our heart was New Zealand and going to the site where most of the Lord of the Rings was filmed. On my bucket list, Pierre, on my travel bucket list, if only it weren't so very, very far away from South Africa. With one eye on the clock, we can't not reflect on K-dramas having their moment. And I'm sure that the tourist moment comes with it.
Yes, certainly. So I lived in South Korea from 2010 until 2011. And I love the fact that I visited these places because before they became so famous in popular culture. And so I would mention that sort of, for example, Mangon Market, various Seoul neighborhoods where we used to go party or dine have become so popular. Gangnam is one. We know that from Gangnam Style as well.
Yes. Okay.
Myeongdong, Hongdae, Yangji Citizens Forest Station, of course. And in general, you just see them so often when you're looking at various series beyond just Squid Games. And what's really interesting about being able to travel in South Korea to go visit them is that fans have created their own maps. So you can go online and find these maps. They'll give you advice on where to go, which subway station to get out of, where to walk, how many steps, when to turn left and right. So people are very much involved in that as well, which
and I love
is so
that
great.
They're sharing that.
Totally.
Again, that's part of being feeling part of a community of fans. I love that. Now, quickly, an honorable mention for the White Lotus, because I would imagine that right now, places that are going through a bit of a dip in tourism are probably writing to the White Lotus creators saying, please put your next season where we are, because it's had that spin-off effect for so many destinations, most recently Sicily, though.
Yes, absolutely. And Thailand as well. And of course, I was thinking about that, and I know that some tourism destinations and tourism boards are actually reaching out and collaborating with producers and various, writers and directors and everything to say, hey, do you want to come do a site inspection? Let's do a little bit of a recce. We can show you, what you can see, what you can portray. So very often there are these sort of hand-in-hand collaborations, as you mentioned.
And literally offering rebates if you come and shoot here as well. So
absolutely.
Watch the space. I believe the next White Lotus is going to the French Riviera. So, can you just imagine? But definitely one to think about there. We've spoken about the need to be sensitive. We've spoken about the need to manage expectations in terms of what is real, what is not real. What would be your recommendation on the best place to start researching? Just in closing, Iga, if somebody really has their heart set on doing a Harry Potter holiday or a place that's going to take them to a Sound of Music location, there's a lot of information online. Any tips or cautions?
Yes, I would say certainly have a look at tourism boards. They're very often capitalizing on that, and they want to minimize over tourism. They want to sort of manage the expectations of local communities. I would say that's really great. Have a look at various blog posts. These days, guidebooks are also including little sections, about movie tidbits and all of that. So I would say that. And then just one final thing I think to keep in mind is just being mindful of local communities. And so remembering that the sudden influx can put a strain on local infrastructure. It increases prices for residents. It creates gentrification. Very often it can also lead to environmental damage if it's not managed sustainably. So I think try to support local businesses, local tour guides, and then just also be aware of your footprint. And just suspend your disbelief a little bit sometimes and remember that perhaps the verisimilitude of the movie might be slightly different, and just to embrace it.
Just live in the magic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been wonderful having you with us again. Thank you so much, with lots of food for thought. Iga Motylska, you can read more on igajourneys.com. She's also a national tourist guide, travel advisor and guidebook writer.